What's up, guys? I'm going to tell you how to change the valve cover gaskets on a 2001 Corvette. First off, I made a little list of tools here that you might need. I've got an 8mm wrench here to disconnect the battery terminal. Very important step because you're going to be disconnecting the connectors in here for the fuel injection, and that goes to the engine control unit. 10mm deep socket. I've got a 10mm swivel socket, a 15mm, I'll get to that in a second, the 3/8" swivel. I've got a pocket screwdriver here, but any small flathead screwdriver will do. 3/8 ratchet, and I've got a power tool just to help speed up the process. Alright, so like I said, step one, you must disconnect the battery terminal, the negative side first. Alright, my setup is a little bit different because it is supercharged, so it may differ a little bit from what you may be working on at home. And I've got this Mighty Mouse catch can that I've already taken off, but just showing you that I'm moving it out of the way. So you've got to take off both of these covers, one on each side. A little difficult to do with one hand. There we go. And from here, what you're going to need to do is use that pocket screwdriver to pull this locking clip out of this connector. Pull up on the tang and lift the connector. Right? So on both sides you have 5 10mm nuts and bolts that you have to remove. I'll point them out here to you. So you've got one over here, one there, one there, one there, and this final one is right back here. Might be a little harder to access, but it's not very difficult at all. Alright, like I said, just over here also. Okay, so now I'm on the passenger side. Same setup. Gotta take off that locking tab, pull the tang up, pull the connector out. You have same 5 screws. Sorry, I mean nuts, studs. There's one back here. I've already loosened them. But the biggest issue that I ran into is this one that's down here. You can't get to. I don't know if you can see that angle. You can't really get to it because the alternator is in the way. Makes it a little difficult. But instead of completely removing the alternator, what I did was I got my 15, put it on my gun, and backed the bolt out just enough to give me clearance. Now, I'm going to sit my 10mm, my short 10mm, on there so that it's secure. Let's see, let's get that in focus. And there we go. Now, don't really want to drop this. Use my magnet. Pulling my socket out carefully. All right, and now just remove by hand. had to screw it in just a little bit with my socket to have enough space to clear the socket, and then have to unscrew the rest of it by hand. A little bit of a pain, but I'd rather do that than have to loosen the accessory belt and move the alternator up out of the way. There we go. It's out. And again, grabbing this entire setup and positioning down by the exhaust manifold. So you have this on this driver's side. Let's see if you can see here. This breather line just comes right up and out. Put that out of the way. Move these lines out of the way. Okay, now that I've got all that out of the way, I'm just about ready to take off the valve covers. But one very important step is this. You have to blow out all of the debris, all of the dirt, to make sure none of that gets in the engine. I've plugged all the holes. I've got that breather line there and the oil cap over there all plugged with clean rags. So all clean. Start removing. Forgot to mention this earlier, but these bolts right here are 8mm. So you're going to need an 8mm socket to take those out. There's 4 of them. And the valve cover is loose. Let's take off the other side. Alright, let's take them off. Now that the valve covers are off, you should put something to cover the valves as they're exposed to open air right now. You don't want any kind of debris. This is the reason why we sprayed it down with the air nozzle. You don't want any debris. This is the passenger side. Really, this is the reason I'm doing this job. It was leaking on this end right here, on the bottom part of the valve cover near the driver. There's nothing noticeably wrong on the valve cover gasket, but it was definitely leaking at this point. Let's see, zoom that in. It's definitely leaking at this point. So, and who knows how old these gaskets are. On my earlier video, you saw that when I took it down to the drag strip, the cap here was dry rotted and ended up blowing out, spreading oil all over the place. This second cap I hadn't seen, and it looks in just as bad a shape. I'm gonna replace this also when I put the valve cover gasket on. Now that we have the valve cover off, we gotta replace these grommets that go in here for the bolt. There's also a sealing plug, so these should definitely be replaced whenever you're doing this job. It came with the kit that I bought, and they're not the easiest thing to do because you definitely don't want to tear it. So I pulled that one up. You got to pull this up off of the screw or the bolt sleeve here, and then push the new one in. But I found it easier to put the grommet on the screw first and then fit it in as a whole, rather than putting this in first and then trying to squeeze that in. That's how I broke this one right here. So I'm going to make do with what I have here. When you're doing these grommets, it's very important also that you have a clean sealing area, because the inside of the grommet is going to seal on this sleeve, and the outside of the grommet is going to seal against the cover. So you got to clean the sleeve, and you got to clean the valve cover. All right. I've got the new gaskets on the valve covers, and I've thoroughly cleaned the sealing surfaces on the head and on the cover itself. All right, replaced all the grommets and replaced the seal. Now it's time to put it on. When you have the valve cover on, you have to torque these rocker arm covers to 12 Newton meters. It's very important, and I also went behind and checked with a mirror to make sure that the gasket was fully seated all the way around. See that blue line right there? You have to be able to see that. Let's see. See right there? All the way around the cover, to ensure that there are, in fact, no leaks. There. Now I'm going to reassemble it. Pop this cover back on, or this bracket back on. Get my bolts, screws, stuff. Everything is going back together now. I've tightened 4 out of the 5 on the driver's side. Now don't forget to tighten this one back here. And don't forget to retighten the alternator. Now it's good to go. Alright, I've connected the negative terminal. Everything appears to be back together, minus the covers, because I need to check for oil leaks. Well, let's start it up. A little bit of residual coming up, that smoke. Alright guys, that's how you replace the valve cover gaskets on a 2001 Corvette C5. I hope you liked the video, I hope this helped you, and please like it if you did, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.